Cristina, can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Cristina Sanchez and I'm a biochemist. I work at Complutense University in Madrid, Spain, and I've been doing research, basic research on cannabinoids for the last 15 years and precisely on the anti-tumor potential of these compounds.
Okay. Now, can you get into a little bit more detail about that? Because that's quite a broad field, isn't it? So recently you've been studying the effect of cannabinoids with breast cancer, is that correct?
Yes, I started my research in the late 1990s on another type of tumor, on glioblastoma tumors, which is a type of brain tumor that is very, very aggressive. But for the last 10 years, I've been focusing my research on breast cancer. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to find out if breast cancer patients may benefit from cannabinoids, not as a palliative compounds, but as anti-tumor therapies.
So to kill the cancer cell?
Exactly. Not only killing cancer cells, but also blocking other important things that are related to cancer progression, because cancer progression not only involves cancer cells growing, but also spreading to new locations and generating metastases and generating new blood vessels to feed the cancer cells. So what we know is that cannabinoids block not only cancer cell proliferation and induces cancer cell death, but also block these other important features of cancer progression.
That sounds amazing. Did you get the time to look at the Dennis Hill interview that we did?
Mm-hmm.
And
yes, I did.
What did you make of it?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Dennis. That's the first thing I want to say.
Good.
But in biochemical terms, or from my perspective, from a basic researcher, I think there were some things that were not 100% precise.
Fantastic.
So,
what were they? What were the things that weren't precise? I'd like to know.
Well, for example, and I understand that this comes from his particular experience, but he said that cannabis oil cured his cancer, and that he recommends patients to take a 1:1 THC CBD ratio.
That's
and
right.
that is the answer for cancer. Mm-hmm. And I do not agree with that. First of all, because we don't know yet if cannabinoids cure cancer in human patients. And I think this is something that is very important to say to patients. We have a lot of preclinical information, very strong preclinical information, and we think that chances are that it may help human patients. But it's important for patients to know that all this information comes from preclinical studies, mm-hmm. which means studies performed in animals, not in humans, and that unfortunately we don't have controlled human trials to get information from them saying that cannabinoids cure cancer. I hope they do, and I'm pushing very hard to have that answer as soon as possible, but we don't have that answer yet.
I hope that
that's the first thing we have to say. And the other one is that if cannabinoids can help patients, cancer patients, which I think they do, it's not always a 1:1 THC CBD ratio. I think, and I'm saying this from all the preclinical research we and other groups have done, each cancer type is different, each patient is different, and probably each patient will benefit from a different THC CBD ratio. So I wouldn't say something like you have to go for a 1:1 THC CBD ratio and that will cure your cancer. I think that's something very risky to say.
That's that's difficult, because you're saying that each patient is an individual and they might need different ratios of THC to CBD.
Yeah, it is. I know it's different, but it's difficult, yeah. But it is the same for other therapies. I mean, for example, in breast cancer, I work on this particular pathology. we use the same term, breast cancer, for all the patients that have a lump in the breast. But in molecular terms and in terms of the therapy they receive, their tumors are completely different. So one has to choose which medicine has to give a particular patient depending on the molecular features of the tumor. With cannabinoids, it's exactly the same thing. In the future, we will know which type of tumor benefit from a 1:1 ratio. It will be a lot of them for sure, but maybe other tumors will need more THC than CBD, or maybe others would need more CBD than THC, and we are not at that point where we have that information yet. I know this is something difficult to accept from the patient perspective, but that's what we know.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit scary from the patient's perspective, because these people are desperate for a cure, and they've heard anecdotal evidence from people like Dennis Hill and Rick Simpson and other people that the cannabis oil does kill cancer cells. And Dennis was saying that he's seen it on a petri dish or something, on I don't know, in some sort of setup where he's seen the cannabinoid actually kill the cell. He mentioned...
Yeah, that's what we do for a living. I mean, we do those experiments all the time. That's what we do on a regular basis. Yeah. And we use these petri dishes, plastic dishes, where we plate the cancer cells and we kill them. And we can kill them with THC, with CBD, with 1:1 ratios, with 1:10 ratios, with 10:1 ratios. And it depends on the type of cancer cells we're working with. So if we translate this to animal models, we see the same thing. Not all tumor types respond the same way to each cannabinoid. So we have better combinations for glioma, in which THC seems to be the most important anti-tumoral compound. We see different effects for human HER2-positive breast tumors, in which CBD seems to be more potent than THC. So it depends on the type of tumor, really. It really depends on the type of tumor.
Was there anything else in the interview with Dennis that you couldn't agree with?
Well, he also said that in order for a cancer cell to respond to cannabinoids, or let me rephrase it, he said that the response to cannabinoid, the anti-tumor response to cannabinoids, depending on the presence of cannabinoid receptors. And he was specifically saying that non-tumoral cell do not respond to cannabinoids because they do not express cannabinoid receptors, or something along these lines. Yeah. So he was suggesting that cannabinoid receptors was the key. And the preclinical information we have doesn't say that. We have some cases in which non-tumoral cells do not respond to cannabinoids because they don't have cannabinoid receptors. But we have other examples in which we have non-tumoral cells that do express CB1 and CB2 receptors, and they do not die in response to cannabinoids. So, I mean, one have to be very careful when saying things like that, and we have to check the scientific literature. And as I told you, for example, in the case of neuroblastoma, neuroblastoma is a brain tumor where when your neurons become tumoral. And we have seen in our preclinical models that neuroblastoma cells, these particular brain tumors, are sensitive to cannabinoids. And I mean, when I say sensitive, I mean that cannabinoids can kill these cancer cells. Well, neuroblastoma cells have CB1 and CB2 receptors. But neurons, healthy neurons, they do also have CB1 and CB2 receptors. And when we treat neurons with cannabinoids, we don't kill them. So the response to cannabinoids does not depend exclusively on the presence of cannabinoid receptors.
I'm drowning.
I don't know if that makes sense, but
I'm trying to understand it, and I've understood most of what you've said. But
not everything, because I can try to explain again. I mean,
it's fantastic.
It is important to get the whole information.
It is very important, and I'm sure Dennis is going to have something to say.
Sure.
Dennis is a person that has cured himself of his stage 3 prostate cancer, and he worked for 10 years as a researcher at MD Anderson Cancer Research Clinic in Texas. So he has personal experience of having cancer. That's what I found Dennis so interesting. He's a biochemist with all this experience of having cancer, doing the research in the cancer, and you too. It's just such a fantastic combination. That's why I wanted to do the interview with you, was to bounce these things off the two of you. So Dennis will obviously have questions for you or comments to say on which is great.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have experience from petri dishes and animal models of cancer, and he has experience on himself and probably from other patients. So we have to talk and we have to work together. We have a say in Spanish, and we say we have to row in the same direction. So we have to work in the same direction, and that's what we have to do. I mean, that's the only way to help patients, and we are both here to help patients.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what interests me as well, is that the promise of a natural, organic type of cure for cancer with little side effects really appeals to me. And that's what Dennis was saying, that he had the stage 3 prostate cancer. He cured it with the cannabis oil, and he kept working 2 jobs at the same time. He didn't have any time off. He didn't have any ill effects apart from a good night's sleep. It sounds too good to be true, but I hope it is true. I really hope.
I hope it is true too. I really hope it is true too. I mean, I'm working to make it true. I mean, that's my dream. So when I started with the research 15 years ago, I never thought we could be so close to the clinics. So I feel privileged to be part of this adventure, and I'll do my best to give the opportunity to patients to have this medicine.
Well, I feel privileged to talk to you, Cristina. That's why I was nervous about the whole thing. I do feel privileged to talk to you because you've put so much into it. Now, talking about clinical studies on humans, you mentioned something about that, didn't you, in Spain this year, or did I hear something about that? Or no?
Well, I don't know.
Are you looking at Are you looking at doing studies on humans?
Yes, absolutely. We are talking to pharmaceutical companies and with oncologists, because we know that cannabinoids have anti-tumoral properties in our preclinical models of cancer. But the next question we have to answer is if they have the same properties on humans. And I think there are 2 ways to answer that question. The first one is doing clinical trials. And that's the regular one, let's say. That's the one that doctors accept. So if we don't have clinical trials, we will never have the medical community with us. So we are pushing oncologists and trying to convince pharmaceutical companies to perform more clinical trials. As far as I know, there are 2 ongoing trials all over the world right now, one in the UK with patients with glioblastoma, and they are being treated with Sativex in combination with temozolomide, which is the drug, the medicine that these patients usually receive. And there is another trial that is being performed in Israel, in this case in patients with solid tumors, breast cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer, anything that is solid. And these patients are being treated with cannabidiol. So as far as I know, these are the only 2 clinical trials that are ongoing right now. And as I was saying, there are 2 ways to answer the question if cannabinoids work as anti-tumoral agents in patients. One is the clinical trials, but we have another source of information that we are wasting, and it's patients that are self-medicating. We know that are thousands of people that are using cannabis to treat.
just to stop you there, I just put up a forum the other day. It's not quite happening yet, but it's a forum for patients using medical cannabis oil. Because as you say, there are thousands out there. Because it's illegal and it has stigma attached to using cannabis, people are very hesitant to come forward and say, you know, I've got cancer. But that's changing now. People are just going, oh, what the hell? I'm dying. I don't care.
I would do the same thing. So yeah, they have the right to do whatever they think it's necessary to heal themselves. So that's a right. That's a human right. So nobody has the right to forbid them to do what they think is best for their health. So I fully agree with you. But the thing is that we are wasting that information because we don't know what they are taking, because in most cases the oils or the cannabis that they are using is not controlled, so we don't know how much THC or CBD is in there. So that information could be so useful for all of us. I mean, if these patients were having a control, a follow-up, I mean, we would have so much information to share with the medical community. Well, still, the clinical trials will be needed. Don't get me wrong, but this other information is so useful, and if you consider the huge amount of people all over the world that are using cannabinoids, not only for cancer but for many other pathologies, for example, for pain, there are so many patients treating their pain with cannabis that we wouldn't need more clinical trials. I mean, it's so clear that it's working, and it would probably be the same with cancer, and we need that information. So we are also working with patient associations in different countries to